So Dr. Steadward, welcome to our conversation today. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about sort of how the Steadward Centre came to be.
Well, we actually have to go back even well before we officially became the Steadward Centre, which was now more than 43 years ago. And I suppose it sort of started when Edmonton and the University of Alberta hosted the very first national wheelchair games in Canada in 1968. And I was very fortunate to be part of that host organizing committee. And leading up to the games, I had met a few of the athletes, and in those days, most of them were either a spinal cord injury or amputation and leg amputation. And so when I was talking with them, they had mentioned that while they didn't really have anyone that was working with them to coach them and to help them with their programs. And so one thing led to the other, and I found out that some of them came through the spinal injured hospital in Edmonton, which was the University of Alberta Hospital. And at the time, a couple or three of the physios and one of the orderlies and a couple of nurses and one of the docs was sort of helping them out at the time to get back into the community and get involved there. So that's sort of where it sort of started, because after the games in 1968, we didn't have a facility, we didn't have equipment, we didn't have coaches to help with any kind of a Paralympic kind of, I guess, sport. And so that's when I continued to work with them in a coaching manner. Then I took the national team in 1971 down to Jamaica to the Pan American Games. And then when we came back from there, we said, well, we still don't have a place to train. The schools that we're going to are not accessible. There's too many barriers. So I said, well, I'm at the university and we did host a few years ago the Nationals. Why don't we look at sort of starting a facility where you people could, as athletes, could come over and train for future regional and national championships and games. So we did. And the first place that opened up, which was quite interesting, and that's where I learned it was easier to apologize than justify, is that the university was centralizing all of the libraries that were decentralized into the various faculties. And so ours, in the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation, it was shut down and moved over to the main library. So all of a sudden, there was some space. And so I went actually to the local organization at the time that was known as the Paralympic Sports Association, and said, if you could come up with some money, either through fundraising or whatever, I'll develop some space for our athletes. And we did. And as a result, that grew into the center as we know it today.
It's amazing to think about how the center kind of had its early roots in parasport. And I realize, Dr. Steadward, that you've had, many, many years and experiences working in volunteering and being involved in the parasport and Paralympic world. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there are any moments that really stand out to you, or kind of memories or moments that are particularly special for you.
Oh my goodness. There was, of course, in the earlier days of the Paralympic movement, even before the International Paralympic movement was created, during those early days, I mean, the challenges we had were immense. Some of the biggest challenge we had was to try to modify and build wheelchairs uh, that would be successful enough to improve our performance on the racing track. And at the same time, uh, we didn't have swimming pools that were accessible where we could help people in and out of the pools. There were no ramps in those days, and there were no lifts in those days. And then to think that we had to move an entire team either across the country or to another country to compete was just unimaginable. In fact, the very first time, or one of the first times that I took a team internationally, we arrive at the airport, this collection of people and wheelchairs and suitcases and etc. So they took us all down onto the tarmac of the aircraft, where the aircraft was located, and they actually loaded us into the back of the plane with a forklift. So I mean, that's how we got in and out, on and off of the planes in those days, and I mean. In one of the planes, I think it was a DC-9, the one with the bathroom right at the very back, facing right down the middle of the aisle. And I think we were on our way to Jamaica or maybe Germany. So one of the fellows, who's a huge man, we had to put him into the bathroom so he could take care of his duties there. And then when he was finished, we couldn't get him out. I mean, this man was 6'6" or 7. You couldn't close the door of the bathroom. So he was sitting there facing everyone with his legs out into the aisle. So once we got to where we were going, then we had to find a way of sliding him down onto the floor and then out and then up into his chair so we could get him on a forklift to get him back down onto the ground. So we had so many laughs and experiences, with different times like that. And of course, in the earlier days of the Paralympics, most of the games were held in rehab centers. In Heidelberg, it was a big rehab center. In Jamaica, it was a rehab center. So they certainly did have facilities that were accessible because it was a rehab center, but the sporting facilities that they developed for the games were very, very basic and not very well built. So we were always adapting not only the equipment or the wheelchairs, but we also had to, of course, adapt the facilities themselves so that people could get in and out of the swimming pools, on and off of the tracks, in and out of the gyms. And in fact, I remember Laval, I think, hosted our national championships one year. No, Montreal, sorry. And we were located in this very, very old college, which was not accessible at all. We had dormitories where the beds were actually welded to the floor, so we couldn't even get wheelchairs between them. It was so hot that year in Montreal that some of the people were sleeping on the roof of the college, which looked into the maximum security penitentiary of Montreal. So we said, they're looking at us, we're looking at them, and we're really wondering who's really in jail here. But basketball was in the gymnasium on the second level of the sport complex. So for every single game, we had to carry wheelchairs, people in chairs up and down for every single basketball game. So, I mean, those were you just took it for granted. Everyone pitched in, everyone helped. And and it was successful. But of course, over the years, our facilities became more sophisticated. The technology of the equipment became better. The science of coaching became extraordinary. In fact, now likely the single greatest change I've seen in the Paralympic movement is the quality of the science of coaching athletes living with a disability. It's really is truly remarkable now. They're all professional coaches that are trained in the area. And as a result, our athletes perform even much, much better than they ever did in the past.
It's interesting that you speak about the coaches, because I think that's one of the parts within our Steadward Bears that we're so proud of. You know, we have Megan, who's been working with our para athletics athletes for a number of years, and she has developed a couple of them to become, you know, these amazing high performance athletes, while still supporting those who are more interested in recreational experiences, like just really developing some expertise when it comes to the sport and the athletes, that we're really proud of that, I think. So that's interesting to hear that that's part that's evolved.
Yeah, and you know, Jen, that's certainly what's happened over the over the years in the Steadward Centre. As you see, the quality of all of our programs have improved so much. And when you look at the parasport side of things, absolutely the kind of education and training and sophistication of training methods now is just getting better and better and better, and so provides our athletes with such an enriched environment to train and achieve their dreams and goals. Absolutely.
For sure. And you know, when you were talking about your kind of the parts that were memorable for you, I'm always struck when I ask people about their memories or experiences of parasport, that it's not often about what happens on the field or on the court. It's always all of the stuff that happens outside of that, and the laughs and the relationships and the connections that you have. That's the stuff that I remember too. And that's what the athletes speak about. Those are the powerful moments, I think, with sport, is all of the stuff that happens outside.
Well, that is so true. And I think that's unique. I mean, having experienced both the Olympic side and the Paralympic side, the greatest, I guess, some of the nicest memories and the nicest and greatest experiences is what you experience outside the competitive aspect of the competition. Sure, the competition is important and it's fierce and it's great and everything like that, but it's after, when you're meeting other athletes from other provinces, other countries, and you're sharing a meal with them, or you're just out enjoying a drink with them, or whatever have you. There are so many interesting things that happen outside of the actual sport in the training itself, and that's why I say the Paralympic movement is unique in that it is more of a family than you see in able-bodied sport or the Olympic side of the sport venues, for sure. And I remember one time we were playing Canada men's basketball, wheelchair basketball was playing Argentina in the gold medal match in England in Stoke Mandeville at the World Championships one year. And the game was Canada was 2 points down, and we had run out of time, but there was a penalty against Argentina. So one of the Canadian players was shooting 2 free throws. And all of us were laughing our heads off because, like in Argentina, I mean, they whistle so shrilling loud that it's deafening. But the interesting thing, Graham Ward was his name. He was sitting at the line, bounce, 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 swish, made the first point, bounce, 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 swish amid all this screaming and hollering and everything. And we were laughing because we were the only ones that knew that Graham was deaf. And so it didn't matter what show was going on with the Argentinians, and they just couldn't believe that this guy could sit under that kind of pressure and make 2 baskets, and then we went on to win, of course. So those kinds of experience, both within but outside of the training and the competitions, it is so, because you build such a special relationship with the coaches and managers in Paralympic sport, which you don't see in able-bodied or Olympic sport. The coach is there and that's it. But there are so many other aspects of a person living with a disability that you need to assist them with, transferring and various things like that, that the relationship is much more than just a coach. Your coach, you might be a father figure, brother figure, sister figure, you might be just about anything, but coaching is only one part of coaching a Paralympian, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And thinking about kind of those different roles that people play, I wonder, you know, lots of people interested in hearing from you. We have lots of athletes, but we also have lots of future professionals. I wonder if you have any advice or sort of any thoughts for folks who are just kind of beginning their career in adapted physical activity, things that you've learned along the way, or just some advice for people starting out.
Yeah, well, you know, it's, I suppose when people always seem to want to work with or volunteer for people who seem to be less fortunate. You know, some poor disabled person you can work with, but you soon realize when you get into the field, it's nothing like you anticipated. It's nothing like you thought it might be. These are people like you and I. They have the same interests. They have the same needs and desires and goals and aspirations and etc. And the important thing is that it's not learning so much about all of the different kinds and types of limitations and disabilities and that. It's learning more and more about the individual and learning about who they are, what they're trying to achieve, how you can facilitate change, and because the learning process goes in 2 different directions. I mean, you're learning from the person living with a disability, and that person is also learning from you. So, I mean, I've always mentioned to young people, young professionals, you know, keep the doors and windows wide open. Keep your mind open. Always ask if you don't know. Don't be afraid to ask a person living with a disability if there's something you don't understand or know about them. Ask, but keep an open mind. Keep a positive mind, and ask, and thou shalt find out.
That is such good advice. Okay, Dr. Steadward, my last question for you.
Yes.
So you provided some great advice for professionals. I wonder if you have any words of wisdom or encouragement or anything for our athletes and participants. Right now, they're in the midst of going the distance, our virtual fundraiser, but throughout the year, they work hard to train and are always, you know, I think it's always helpful to have a few words of wisdom or encouragement to kind of keep plugging away.
Well, you know, Jen, an athlete has to recognize that there's a recipe that goes into being successful. And the ingredients for success is the same for everyone, but it's how you take those ingredients and make it into something that's successful. So you've got to make sure, does that athlete, do you have the skill and the talent to do the best that you can be? Are you prepared to commit yourself to your training and your competition and to yourself? Are you prepared to make the necessary sacrifices in order to be successful as an athlete? Because all along the way, there are going to be things that you're going to have to miss out on. And those sacrifices is because of your commitment to your sport and doing the best that you can be. And then very lastly, of the fourth ingredient for success is attitude. And that's likely the most important aspect. Sir, it's important that you're able to relax and that you're able to foresee what a perfected success of your swimming stroke or whatever you're doing is important, but you've got to remain and have that positive, enthusiastic, respected, trustworthy attitude in order to eventually be successful.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Steadward.
Well, you're very welcome.
Those were all the questions I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to add at all?
No, I think we've covered the waterfront. I mean, it's just so nice that that you've got a group of people who are enthusiastic to help raise the necessary profile and funding to support the program. I mean, these programs do operate on somewhat on love, but they also need a little bit of pocket change on the side to help cover those expenses. And so I wish you all the luck, and I sincerely hope that the program is as successful as it certainly can be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steadward. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.